Hello, I am your host for Blonde and Beyond. That's the name of the show. My name is Judge Lee B. First. I am the former supervising judge of the Workers' Compensation Board of the entire state of New York. I'm the former president of the Metropolitan Women's Bar Association. I'm an author. I wrote a book, Justice is Blonde. And today I have a wonderful show for you. I'm going to teach you the history of Jewish women in America based upon the book which was recently published, Her Works Praise Her. This book teaches us that the first Jewish women came here in 1654, and therefore in the year 2004 is going to be the 350th anniversary of when Jewish women first came to America. Now in 1654, what happened is 26 Jewish people, men and women and children, in New York, from Recife, escaped the Inquisition in Portugal, and then they went to, they thought they were free, but the long arm of the Inquisition to Brazil, escape again. And when he immediately sent notice to Holland, to all the Jews. Prior there were men who had come to America. That didn't bother him, but he said once women come, families and homes will be established for Jewish people. So the Dutch West Indies had people, Jewish people, who owned stock in the company, and they wrote him back that he must keep the Jewish families in America. He doesn't have to give them anything, he doesn't have to do anything for them, but they must remain. Now, by the way, they came here dirt poor because originally they had money when they came from Spain after all the wandering. On the last trip here, they were on a boat, and the pirates raided the boat and took away everything that these Jewish families had. So now what happened is they arrived here, they suddenly were free. They suddenly had a right to own land that you couldn't take away. They had a right to get married whenever they wanted, and they had a right to work in any profession. It was the greatest miracle that they got to live here. Now, once women came to America, Jewish women have always been in the forefront of doing good deeds, especially charity, because they felt charity was something that was Jewish, even though they no longer had religion with them. Many of them forgot about all these things, keeping the Sabbath, but they always took care of each other. So when they came here, they built hospitals, they built schools, they brought with them equestrian education, much more than any other women from any other countries. They did so many good deeds. The book that I told you has described what these women did in America, but half-hour show, we cannot go over all the things that they did. Famous women. For example, there was Henrietta Szold. She established Hadassah, which today is the largest Jewish organization in America. That was done in 1912. Then we have, for example, Rebecca Gretz. She saw how poor the women were, so she made an entire organization, Female Hebrew Benevolent Association. There were women that were forced into prostitution, and they were dirt poor, their husbands abandoned them, etc. So she made that organization in order to help other women. There was Sally Present, who was the first female rabbi in America. So it's the most interesting. These women, Jewish women, have always worked. When they came to America, in Europe they supported their husbands who sat and learned the Bible. So Jewish women were always used to going out of the house. They were peddlers, etc. They owned restaurants. Came here, they did the same thing. They were very, very active. Now, in Here, 1820, there were 2,000 Jews living in America, but by there was a very big immigration here. They had 250,000 Jews living in America. Of course, all of them came husbands and wives, etc. Now, also, some came along, but then they would send for wives from Europe. If they married someone who's not Jewish here, which was very rare, if they lived out of town, then that girl had to convert. There were no intermarriages at that time. Now, from 1881 to 1924, 1 in 3 Jews immigrated to America from Eastern Europe. That's 1 in 3 because there were so many pogroms and people had to go into the army, etc. And so they escaped and came to this. And the women here, they were always working because people were very poor. They were traveling salesmen, peddlers, the women, or they opened restaurants and they all took in boarders, and then they fed the boarders, made a restaurant in their own house. Now what happened by 1800, women, 1900 I need to say, women organized garment workers union. In the garment industry, 90% of workers were Jewish, men and women. And the women organized the strikes, and of course they also Jewish women supported suffragettes. They were very, very active in America. What happened is once the women were out of the house and they started working in factories, they got married without their parents' approval. The parents were in Europe anyway. And then they got married for love. As the philosopher said, the greatest tragedy is when you marry for love and then you find out he's got no money. So what was the result here? That the parents no longer had any control over these children. And in Europe, everyone looked for money, status, family. That no longer existed. And the marriage brokers who used to be so busy and make money on this, they were totally out of business. They complained. They had to open up different businesses because, however, there were many husbands who came from Europe. They said to their wives, we're going to America, make money, and then we'll send for you. So many of them never sent. Even though they had children in Europe and wives, they never sent for them. And the wives did come here looking for them. So the Jewish women in America made a lot of organizations to help these women to look for their husbands. There were 2,500 cases per year of such husbands who no longer supported their wives and children. It was very sad. So what happened is the people who came from Europe, who were so poor there, they came to America, they lived in tenements, and they had borders. They had borders even in the kitchen. I'm not sure if they had any in the bathroom, but they were borders all over. And that's how they lived, in terrible quarters. And they felt so rich. You know why? Because they had running water in the sink. They had a stove that they didn't have to bring coal in. Then, in 1902, they passed a law that every apartment in the tenement buildings has to have a bathroom and a toilet inside the apartment. So this was a miracle for them. They felt so rich, they had a wonderful life. All of a sudden in 1902, they invented the living room. They said, let's have one room where nobody sleeps so we can all gather. Who ever heard of such a thing in Poland? Now, women were allowed to work all along, as I said, but they were not allowed to fully support their husbands. That did not look nice. They were invisible workers. So what could they do? They could help out in the candy store. A lot of them did sewing at home. They became peddlers, but they couldn't go out and work and say, I'm supporting this family. But still, unless the husband sat and learned Torah. Now, what a lot of these women did, they started tremendous businesses because like Horwitz Margaretten, Mrs. Horwitz Margaretten, she baked matzahs one year, then she baked more, and then of course that's the largest matzah factory now, and they make other things, and there were a lot of these women, it's all told, all this history is in the book, how just by making things in their little kitchen, ultimately they became very big companies. Now, what happened by the 1930s, suddenly women were allowed to be educated. Until then, they were only allowed to work a little bit. And until 1930s, only sons went to college because they didn't want to educate women, you know. They said, women's not important. Don't even finish high school, they said to them. But from then on, women were not only allowed to go to high school, but they were allowed to even go to college. So when I came to America from Switzerland in 1941, people told me, you don't go for an academic course. You have to take a commercial course. All you'll ever be is a typist or a secretary. That's the height. Of course, I didn't listen to them, and I took an academic course, and I became a judge, as you know. Now, what happened in 1920 was the first bas mitzvah held in America. A girl got bas mitzvah because she learned the Torah. That's Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan. He was a Reconstructionist, and he allowed his daughter to have a bas mitzvah. In 1912, Henrietta Zold, she founded Hadassah, as I said, but why did she do that? Not just to do charity or send money to Israel. There was no Israel. It was to study Judaism because the women suddenly ran the household. Men worked 7 days a week, and the women were supposed to keep a Jewish home, but they didn't know anything because they did not know how to pray. Even when they went to synagogue, they did not have a siddur, a prayer book. They had their own book in Yiddish. Tzena Verena it was known. So Henrietta Zold went and registered in the Jewish Theological Seminary, but she had to sign a paper that she will never become a rabbi. Even if she knows as much as a rabbi, they will not have to give her a degree to become a rabbi. Now, what happened is women started to be educated in the 30s. They knew a lot, but they were never allowed to speak in men's organizations. They were allowed to serve the coffee, they said, the coffee and cake, and have sisterhoods. But these sisterhoods started to outshine anything the men ever did. They founded Hebrew schools. They took care of poor people. They founded, like when the organization taking care of the dead. These sisterhoods became so powerful, they raised so much money in the synagogues that the men turned to the women that they should help them with money, etc. Now, what happened when these women got so angry, this was the year 1893, the women went to a meeting with the men. There was a big men's meeting, and they wanted to go in. They were told you cannot go in. So they turned around and they said, we will make our own organization. They let it known all over the world, let it be known, that people from England, from Germany, Jewish women came to America. They founded an organization. The name of it is the Jewish Women's Union. Why did they do that? They said for three purposes: to study the Jewish religion, philanthropy, and education. Those were wonderful ideals. By the year 1896, they had 4,000 members from all over the world. By the year 1970, they had 110,000 members. And they changed the name to National Council of Jewish Women. Only one bad thing happened in 1913. The women got together and they said, we don't want this organization to promote Judaism, like the Sabbath and Orthodoxy and learning, all those things. We're just a charitable, benevolent association. So, of course, the women who founded this organization, they left. So it split, and now the National Council of Jewish Women is here to do charity. They go to Holland, they teach black people. They're very left-wing, liberal. They don't support Jewish causes, essentially. Maybe some of them they do. That's what they do. Now, I want to tell you, why is it important to know Jewish history or any history? I was married 50 years, a few months ago, and I had a big ceremony with a chuppah, with everything. So my brother, the rabbi, said, people are asking today, why is my sister getting married again, doing everything the same way, 50 years later? So I must tell you, he said, as the philosopher said, those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. So in other words, you can apply that to any situation. It's very funny. Now, in the 1950s, 15% of all workers in America, Jewish workers, were professionals. That's in the 50s, doctors, lawyers, etc. But by 1938, already only about 1/3 of the households here, the women lit the candles or kept the kosher home. Things were forgotten here because they didn't go into Jewish subjects at all. So we lost a lot of Jewish people. But in 1920, a miracle happened. What happened? They invented modern orthodoxy, and this meant that you didn't have to cover your hair, wear a sheitel, or be all dressed like Orthodox. Any woman can come to synagogue and can pray and can sing out loud, and this reawakened all the Judaism in America. They had the Young Israel movement, Rabbi Lookstein Sr. and Rabbi Leo Young. So they got a lot of women interested in Jewish education and Jewish religion. But in the 40s, people did not remember how to keep a kosher house. It was too difficult because all the products on the market, they didn't know which product was kosher. There were so many ingredients. So they prevailed upon the OU, Union of Orthodox Congregations, that they should go and send representatives to different big corporations, find out what the ingredients are, send chemists there, and then put their stamp OU on the product. And today we don't have to read all the ingredients because of what these women did. We don't have to read it, we can just go in and we see OU, it means it's all right for us to have a kosher house. But in 1964, everything changed for women because prior thereto, women could not get jobs. Whether you were Jewish, all kinds of women. When I was a lawyer, women, all the graduates, they couldn't get jobs in big law firms. They didn't want to hire women. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is on the U.S. Supreme Court, when she got pregnant, she had gone to Harvard too. When she got pregnant, she lost her job. That's the way they treated women. But in 1964, the Civil Rights Movement was passed because women helped it also to be passed, and because of that, they passed a law you cannot discriminate against anyone because of sex, religion, and race. So therefore, the women suddenly became elevated, and the feminist movement became very strong, and women could get jobs. They could not be fired for being pregnant, and if they were discriminated against, we had the Human Rights Commission. You could sue if you could prove that. So this was a wonderful thing. From then on, women went much further. Now, what happened after that? Women like Betty Friedan, Bella Abzug, Gloria Steinem, these old Jewish women, they founded the feminist movement, and they tried to help women to get as far as they can. And then Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique, and Good Housekeeping magazine made a survey of all these women who had gone to Harvard, Yale, all over, and they asked them, is the feminine mystique true? Are you really happy being home and your husband supporting you? And the answer was, we are bored. We want to do things with our life. So they started to come out, and women became doctors and lawyers and actually worked at it. When I became a lawyer, it was a shame. Why is she working, leaving her kids? But then it was all right. From then on, everybody could work and do whatever they want. Women were free. They were free. And to pass the Roe versus Wade, women had total control over their bodies. It was a miracle that happened. Then now and today, the women, Jewish women today, they want to know Jewish spirituality. They even founded an organization, Feminism in Orthodoxy. How can women be more powerful and do everything but within the Jewish law, not to come out of the Jewish law, just to keep, so we have Lou Greenberg, she's the president, and so it took so long for these women in the Jewish religion to get any rights. As you know, finally in 1972, the Reform movement accepted Sally Priesand to be a rabbi. And then after that, in 1972, the conservative Jews, they had an assembly in the Concord Hotel. They asked the women to leave. So the women took another room, and they formed their own organization. The name of the organization was Ezrat Nashim, and they became so strong that a year later, in the conservative movement, the women were given the right to be part of a minyan, to be counted as the 10 important people to pray. They were given the right to be called to the Torah, And later, not at that time, they were given the right to become rabbis, which was the most unheard of thing in the conservative movement. But the Orthodox movement has not yet accepted women as rabbis, although girls today and boys are in the same classes in yeshiva. Girls learn as much as boys, exactly the same curriculum, but they will not allow them to be rabbis. And as the joke goes, how many Orthodox rabbis does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is change. Be very slow to change in Orthodoxy, very, very slow. Now we have, the feminist movement has become very, very strong, even among the Jewish women in Jewish religion. Our synagogue hired an assistant to the rabbi. You have a right to ask her questions about things which women are ashamed to ask when they want to go to their male rabbi. And many synagogues, even Orthodox ones, have assistant rabbis that, or they don't call them rabbis, God forbid, that, but they have them working there, you know. So what happened is, my brother, who's a rabbi, he says, in the Garden of Eden, there were men and women were equal. But when the woman sinned, and then God gave the women 2 curses. And what was curse number 1? In pain you will have children. Number 2, your husband will rule over you. The issue is, can these curses, are they a command? Must they always be over women? Or can a woman free themselves from this curse? Now what happened when they invented anesthesia, and then the question was asked, could a woman use anesthesia when she's giving birth to a child? And the Catholic Church said no, because in pain you will have children. Therefore we cannot allow that. But the Orthodox Jews said yes, a woman is allowed to use anesthesia when she gives birth, because if God invented anesthesia, he wanted you to use it. Now what about the second curse? The second curse said the male will rule over you. So what happened with that curse? We see today that men and women are equal in jobs, women are moving up. You see, all that feminism has brought a lot of good results. Now when we will be in the Garden of Eden again, when the Messiah comes, women will again be equal to men. We will live as we lived in the Garden of Eden. So therefore, the more women's liberation that you see today, the closer we are to the coming of the Messiah. That's what my brother taught me, and I think that's a beautiful statement. So I want to tell you that when women go to work today and they make a lot of money, the joke is told that the boys who are studying Torah, you know, many people just sit and learn Torah in the yeshiva, you call it a kollel. Those boys, they want to bring back polygamy. So we say, why? They said, we cannot live on the earnings of one wife. And also, I have to tell you another joke, because when we got out of law school, first of all, when I became a judge, men were not accustomed. There might have been some women lawyers, but certainly there weren't any judges. It was 1975, and this little Italian man came in. He didn't have a lawyer. He told me his case, and I let him win the case. So he said to me, I want to thank you very much, but I was told I would see the judge today. See, in those days, you could never see a woman being a judge. It was such a shock to them. Also, when we got out of law school, we were telling that joke that, because women really couldn't get jobs, you know, it wasn't just like it was today. Nobody can believe it. It was only 50 years ago, 1954. And yet things were so different then. So 3 men, they meet every year, and one year only 2 men show up. So great. Finally they see a gorgeous girl is walking by, and she said, hello. They said, we don't know you. The girl said, well, I am Josephine. I used to be Joe, your friend. They said, are you kidding? What happened? So she said, I had a sex change operation. So they said, are you serious? Didn't it bother you when you had the surgery to do certain things to your body? So she said, no, it didn't bother me. So they said, well, didn't it hurt you when they put the breasts on your body, changing your body? She said, no, that did not bother me at all. So they said, tell us, did anything bother you? So she said, yes, when they cut my salary in half, that's what killed me. Now what happened even in those days, if a woman wanted to go to law school, when I went to law school in Harvard, they made Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the chief judge, they made her sign a paper. A whole composition. Why do you think you have the right to take the place away from a man who could be going in your place to Harvard? They would not allow women just to enter. That wasn't that long ago. They would not allow them to enter law school just by applying. But of course, then later on, as I said, things got very good. The feminism movement has helped a lot of women. And of course, the women can be today, they have to be happier because they today have a choice. Can I be a housewife if I want to, and a mother, and be happy? Or can I go to work full time? They can choose. Nobody's forcing them. We are living in the greatest era. I hope you enjoyed my talk, and thank you very much.